an hour wait. I'll stick it under there. I talked at the ISD conference in California this last year, and there's like 40 people in the audience, and every other word got heard because the microphone kept acting up. So I think that has something to do with my wanting to talk, I guess. I am really excited to be here and to be back in Iowa, and I appreciate Mavis asking me up. I wanted to talk about compassion. I find it a hard thing to understand. People throw that word around a lot, and I have found it challenging to understand, how does compassion differ from love? How does it differ from empathy? How does it differ from anything? Because in order to practice it, you have to understand what it means. I had the privilege of being able to listen to the 14th Dalai Lama in Madison, Wisconsin. And there was a great big, demonstration that was going on outside the hotel, and they had security guards there. So it was a little bit intimidating to walk in to listen to him. And in front of 7,000 people, he is talking. Now, what I know about the Dalai Lama is he was first found to be the next incarnation of the Dalai Lama when he was 2 years old. At the age of 5, he became enthroned as the 14th Dalai Lama in Tibet. By the time he was 15, he had assumed his responsibilities of his country. When he was 24 years old, he had to flee Tibet into India because of threats on his life, because of the uprising that was going on in China, or in Tibet. The Chinese were taking over the country. When I listened to him sitting there and talking to the 7,000 people that were there, never once did he talk bad about what was happening in his country. He only talked about their right to live their life the way they wanted to, and to promote understanding. What I found really interesting about the Dalai Lama, because I found this really cool quote, because when I look at the news, I despair sometimes that there is anything good in the world, although my personal experience doesn't say that. And the Dalai Lama said that he thinks that we are naturally compassionate in our nature. He said because over the millions of years that we have lived, we have thrived. And if we were warlike people, and we were angry and causing war all the time, our numbers would decrease. And he said the reason why the news is the way it is it reports things that are uncommon. Well, the uncommon things are the evil things we do to each other. And that gave me a lot of hope, because it's like, okay, so the news lets me know that there are things that are not so right in the world, but basically, we're compassionate. What I want to have you think back for a few minutes is, where were you on September 11th, 2001? When the planes hit the World Trade Center? Because I know what happened to me. I was standing at work. I had just given a little child a bath. And all of a sudden, I looked up, and on the TV, someone said something happened to the World Trade Center. And I'm like going, oh my gosh. And I remember in that moment really wanting to do something. I wanted to reach out. I needed to do something. I didn't know what to do. I called my teacher at the School of Metaphysics, and I said, I have to do something. So I went to the church, the local church down from the school, and there was a prayer service. And that was the way that I could contribute. Being able to understand compassion needs to go beyond just a feeling. We had a moment there where the whole entire world was united in consciousness, and was united in one thought to relieve the suffering of the people that were there. I think of compassion as a virtue. A virtue means it's something that we can practice, we can enhance, we can understand, and we can grow in. When you break down the word compassion, Kan, or kam, C-O-M, it means to come with, or to be with. And pati, which is the other part of compassion, means to suffer with. So it's suffering with somebody. So what does that mean? Because I've grown up a long time thinking suffering is a good way to get to heaven, but it's not really. So I have found that there are 3 doorways that lead me into understanding compassion, 3 ways that I can understand myself better in my desire to serve. Because I cannot make a difference in the world if I don't understand myself and my own intentions. My first my first word that I like to talk about is harmony. Because really, studying a virtue starts with the self, being able to understand self. Now, I always thought that being in harmony meant I needed to change myself to be like everybody else. I needed to change my thoughts, change my opinions, and be what other people wanted me to be. However, what that happened is I lost who I was. And so that didn't necessarily work very well for me. When the Buddha says that, actually, let me go this way. Harmony also does not mean an absence of conflict. So when I heard that, I thought, wow, what does harmony really mean? Because I thought if I avoided conflict, I was in harmony with people. And if I was in harmony with people, I was okay. That didn't really include other people in my picture. So harmony has come to mean that what I feel on my insides is what's reflected out in the public. And I have this really cool quote that the Buddha asked his monks one time. This is from one of the Theravada texts from Southeast Asia, which, since you just came from there. It says, when one acts with love towards one's companions in the spiritual life, both in public and in private. Harmony is when one speaks with love towards them, both in public and in private. When one thinks with love towards them, both in public and in private. When one shares with them without reservations whatever they have acquired justly, even if it's only the food in their bowl. When one possesses together with them virtues that are complete, unbroken, freedom-giving, praised by the wise, and conducive to concentration. And finally, when one possesses with one's companions in the holy life, both in public and in private, the understanding that is noble, leading to freedom, and which conduces to the complete destruction of suffering, then there will be love and respect, helpfulness and agreement, harmony and unity. So harmony involves the people around us, but mostly it involves us in being all right with ourselves. So if I'm not okay with myself, I find it more difficult to find compassion for others. The second quality that you can practice with compassion is empathy. And I think that is the one that people are most familiar with because you feel for another person. You can actually walk into that individual to know what they're thinking, to know what they're feeling, to know how they're responding to things. When you can walk in another person's shoes, you have great understanding. The Dalai Lama says that when you meet another person, to always remember that they want the same thing you do. They want happiness, and they want to avoid suffering. Every single person. Not just you, not just me, every single one of us. So what right do we have to criticize another person's journey towards happiness in their own way? We spend a lot of time looking at other people, criticizing, or thinking that we're criticizing because we don't have understanding. And empathy is a way to walk in to understand. I have a story. I worked as a nurse for 30 years in the pediatric department. And there's this one little boy. Some patients just become those people that you learn from. And his name was Donald. And he was from Vietnam. His family was from Vietnam. And he had developed a virus when he was a child that damaged his heart, and he developed what they called cardiomyopathy, which is a gradual failure of that muscle. Well, he's 12, 14 years of age now at the hospital, and the doctors are saying the heart's getting pretty bad here. You're going to need a heart transplant. And it's very challenging to get a heart transplant for a child. So they go home. They say, yes, they'll be ready to go. When you get a call for a heart transplant, you have to come in right away, because the need is immediate. So they put out the call to the family, and everything had been arranged ahead of time. They called the family, and they turned down the heart because they couldn't get there. So, we're like going, wow, okay. So Donald comes back into the hospital. He gets stabilized. We meet his family. They're all on the same page, yes. Parents are saying, yes, we want the heart. He goes home, and second miracle, he gets a call for a second heart. And they turn it down. And it's like, okay, I wonder what's really going on with this family. There was a lot of misunderstanding with hospital personnel. We all loved and cared about Donald. We couldn't understand why the family turned down the heart. So the last time I got to know Donald and his family, I talked to his father. And I said, what's going on? I don't understand. And he said, well, in our culture, all of our family and our community share in the decision-making of our child. It's not just us. We can say it's okay to have the heart transplant, but when the call comes in, we have to consult the entire family. So from thinking that there is something wrong with this family to starting to really understand the differences between us allowed us to have some kind of understanding. So that day, every single member of his family came up to me and told me that if we called for another heart, they would be willing to come. Being able to establish some kind of communication between people is so important, to be able to know where they come from, the decisions they make. Oftentimes, when we are looking at others and wondering and being curious about them, or judging them, or criticizing, there's a need for us to stop and ask questions. What's really going on here? This is what I hear you say. Because the majority of difficulties we have in life is a misunderstanding between people and communication. And to open that doorway requires us being willing to ask more questions. The final quality that I can talk to you about is kindness. Now, kindness, everybody seems to know what kindness is, and I thought it was too. People would say, make a donation. I'd do a donation. I'd hold doors for people. But when you want to understand compassion, kindness has a little bit more of a meaning. Because you can be kind and impersonal, which doesn't really establish anything, or you can be kind and go the extra mile to actually make a difference in somebody's life. So, let's say you go into the grocery store, and the checkout lady is very rude and grouchy and hard to get along with and seems to be taking forever getting your groceries done. What do you do? What can you do in that moment that could be kind, that could make a change, that would require a little of you? Smiling at her and saying, you must have had a bad day. Taking a moment to assess what's going on with her so that you can offer her a word. Simple little things can bring out our compassion in another person. Because if you can put yourself in her place, and you can imagine that she has been on her feet for 12 hours, and it's been very busy, and she's getting a little cranky, maybe her blood sugar's dropping, you can put yourself in her place, there's understanding. And that is what compassion is about. It is about reaching out to others and understanding, first with understanding the self, because you have to be okay in self. And if you find that you can't be empathetic with another person and you can't be kind, the place to start back with is self. Because when you can be okay with self, that's where compassion of self comes in. It's being okay that maybe today I can't do it, but I understand I can't do it today, so what do I need to do to right myself so that I can go out tomorrow and be more compassionate? And learning to love the self and to forgive the self in the name that this is a journey, and every day is a new opportunity for us to reach forward and to get to know our neighbors. I want to leave you with one thing that I thought was very good. I have 15 pages of notes. I want you to know I did not go through all of them. Anyway, I thought that this was really cool, and I wanted to leave this as an image for you to take with you today. It says, I want you, first of all, to close your eyes. And I want you to picture a table in the middle of a room. And I want you to see, maybe there's somebody that you're not in harmony with right now, that you're angry with or upset with, or you don't see eye to eye with. And I want you to see yourself standing on one side of that table. And I want you to see the other person or the group of people on the other side of that table. And now, I would like you to put both groups of people on the same side of the table. And you're all looking at that table as if the table is the conflict. Y'all there? Okay. And now what if you could remove that table? So that rather than being antagonists, you become players together, partners, working to solve a mutually agreed upon issues. I'd like you to take that with you. And when you are having challenges and difficulties, remember, it is the views, the opinions, thoughts that we have that are in conflict, but that on a higher level, we are all connected, and we all want love, happiness, and freedom from suffering. Thank you.